There are 8 ARR Reborn Extreme trials in Final Fantasy XIV. For the most part, they can all be explained quite fast. You're here either out of curiosity, because you're about to queue for one or multiple of them, or you're a mentor that just found yourself in one of these duties. If you're in a hurry, make use of the chapters in the timeline to find the fight you need. Otherwise, enjoy my TLDR ARR Reborn Extreme Trials Synced rundown. Ultima weapon. Current tank will gain stacks of viscous aetheroplasm. Hitting 5 stacks means instant death. Tank switch at the latest at 4 stacks. I personally recommend switching on 3 stacks as that gives an unaware co-tank time to see the warning. Invuln does not work. Etheric Boom happens at 50, 30 and 15% HP, featuring 2, 3 and 4 pairs of orbs spawning closer and closer together too. The tethered pairs will move towards each other and should they connect, instant party wipe. This can be prevented by having players run into the orbs. If one orb in a pair is dealt with, the other will despawn a moment later, so both don't need to be soaked. When a player runs into an orb, it explodes in a larger shared AoE, and 2 healthy DPS or healer players can take 1 orb. A tank can also solo an orb, or by using several defensives can take several orbs in succession, but take note that Invuln does not work. Certain non-tank jobs can also survive soloing an orb. However, the best practice is to pairwise deal with orbs. If all else fails, sacrificing yourself to get rid of orbs is better for the team as a whole. Each boom, as well as certain other mechanics, may knock you around. Keep this in mind when other mechanics are happening simultaneously. Also, unless the fight is ending, it is recommended to assist in getting rid of the Magitech bits. Garuda. Tank buster, Garuda will sometimes do a frontal cleave with no warning. Additionally, Slipstream is a frontal cone tank buster that you can simply step aside to dodge. The first time she leaves the arena, she comes back and fires Mistral's Song through the middle of the arena. Hide behind rocks to survive this. Throughout the fight, Garuda and her minions will use various attacks, and anything even remotely AoE can hurt the rocks, which you don't want to happen. Plumes. The Satin Plume will put the raid to sleep if not dealt with quickly. Regular Razor Plumes can do damage. The Spiny Plume produces a wind barrier when it dies. However, outside of a particularly slow party, this will not matter. It also must be tanked and builds stacks of thermal low. Hitting 3 stacks is an immediate party wipe, so keeping the Spiny Plume alive for the barrier requires tank swapping. It is recommended to simply kill it off like the other plumes. When Shirada and Serpana spawns, have the main tank bring Garuda and Serpana to the far north of the arena. Have the other tank bring Shirada to the far south. Deal with Shirada first so everyone can go north and deal with Serpana. Garuda's aerial blast damage is determined by how many rocks are left. Less rocks means more damage. If Garuda leaves the arena again after the aerial blast, have a tank use Limit Break as she comes down. This replaces a Spiny Plume shield. This also heralds the Shirada Serpana phase repeating with Tornado AoE, so be careful. A Spiny Plume will also appear at this time, however it is unlikely you will need this barrier. On the off chance you do need it, I instead recommend probably juggling the Spiny Plume after the aerial blast and saving the tank limit break for after the second set of adds. Titan. Tank Buster. Titan's Mountain Buster happens without warning and adds a physical vuln. I recommend tank switching if a tank hits 3 stacks. Aside from that, try to cycle defensives to reduce damage overall, but if you can predict it, aim to have one running when Mountain Buster hits. To prevent other players from being hit, tank Titan at the edge of the arena, facing out. Jails. 2 players get marked, and if they are too close, a tether appears. Optimally, have one player under Titan and the other far away. Then help save both. Upheaval. Often coinciding with jails, Titan will go into a sumo stomp pose and a moment later hit with a circular knockback. Make sure to move such that you have the most space to get knocked back. Granite Jailers. 2 adds spawn. Have whoever is not currently tanking Titan pick these up, and kill them off in a corner, as they produce an AoE field when they die. The closer together they die, the less space they take up. Everything else is more punishing versions of the hard mechanics, so use eyes and dodge. Ifrit. Tank Buster. Ifrit will regularly perform a Fire Breath attack that applies a stacking debuff. I recommend tank switching at 3 or 4 stacks as you are able, to reduce the burden on the healers. Searing Winds. Ifrit will alternate applying this debuff to the 2 healers, which causes a large knockbacking circle AoE to burst from the healer every 3 seconds. This is dealt with by having the healer run far away from the raid and staying away, which puts a heavier burden on the other healer to do most of the healing in that time period. Healers handling this mechanic properly can be the deciding factor on whether you can or cannot beat this fight, so prioritize this. Chains. Every so often, 2 players will get chained together, usually the tank not tanking Ifrit at that moment and a DPS. This increases the damage they take the further apart they are from each other. Try to stick close together. Nail explosions. Each exploding nail generates a very short-lived vuln debuff that stacks. It is perfectly survivable for a healthy party to take 3 explosions, perhaps even 4 in quick succession, but preferably the explosions are spread out more. The first wave of nails happens at around 75% and has 4 nails. The second wave happens at around 50% and has 7 nails. The third wave happens at 15% and has 12 regular nails, as well as a 13th bigger nail. It is very normal for a party to reach this last set on the first pull, only to fall apart during it, so stay focused, manage all of the mechanics and damage, and carefully deal with the nails. You have much longer than you think you do. King Moggle Mog. The first 2 times a Mog's Guard dies, the king will cast Moggle's Oblige to use his own HP to raise and fully heal the entire Mog's Guard. After the second time, Mog Meteor is cast doing raid-wide damage and signaling the finale. Killing a Moogle at this time will prompt the king to begin Memento Moogle, which is a hard enrage. You need to kill all the Mog's Guard and the king before this cast to win. Tanks. Split the king and the 2 tank Mog's Guard Coup de Coup and Coup de Kappa between them. The king will every so often buff nearby Moogles, and the tank switch involves swapping which tank is tanking the king, not the Mog's Guards. As the king can also buff other Mog's Guard, try to move away if Mog's Guards randomly waddle near the king. Everyone in the party should carefully whittle down all the Mog's Guards to about 10% HP, but be careful. If possible, aim to reduce the Black Mage, the Palm Burner, last. Simultaneously, consider also delaying hurting the White Mage Kuplikip. Whenever the Black Mage starts casting Mog Flare, carefully hit it with a few weak attacks to interrupt it. Similarly, when the White Mage starts casting Holy, the exact same solution works. This is why you should keep them a bit healthier. Certain mechanics in all the chaos can apply debuffs the healers must use Ashuna for. Some mechanics may reset the enmity on the tank Moogle, so tanks should pay attention. Aside from this, the Mog's Guard has mechanics where they strike in a triangle in the center of the arena, or suddenly several players are hit for damage. Due to all the chaos, me listing all of them won't help you much beyond use your eyes, dodge and stay alive. Play carefully. Once all the Mog's Guards are near death, kill them off quickly and start again. Leviathan. Leviathan's head reflects ranged physical attacks back at the attackers. Leviathan's tail reflects magical attacks, melee or ranged, back at the attacker. Additionally, the tail also has both the flank and rear positionals. One tank should pick up the head, the other the tail. Because Dark Knights have magic attacks in their arsenal, if you have just one Dark Knight, let them tank the head. The tank that is tanking the tail gets the Briny Mirror debuff, which punishes anyone casting a direct heal on them with a stacking debuff, which eventually pacifies the player. Healers can circumvent this by healing this tank primarily with healing over time effects like Regen, or indirect healing like Cardia or Embrace. When using AoE healing, try to step far away from this tank to avoid hitting them, as this counts too. Whenever adds spawn at all in this fight, they should be prioritized over Leviathan, with the exception of blue orbs. The target priority is Wave Tooth, Wave Spine, Gyrospumes. The blue orbs can be picked up by a tank and simply wait it out, although try to have a defensive going when the orbs are about to explode. Whenever Leviathan leaves the arena, if the elemental converter is available, usually you should use it after Leviathan dashes across the arena. Aside from that, if a splash of water appears on the corners of the west and east side of the arena, run to the opposite end in anticipation of the slide. If a splash appears basically anywhere else, simply get out of the way as a dash is incoming. If adds are not dealt with quickly enough, then Leviathan may choose to simply do a dash without a raid wire or anything early in the fight, and as you need to activate the elemental converter just about when the dash occurs, this itself can be a wipe. If the Wave Tooth is allowed to cast, avoid the circle it puts down, as the fear is effectively automatic death. Ramuh. Grabbing 3 orbs makes you resistant to Ramuh's Shock Strike, and removes the Rolling Thunder tether if you have it. Orbs appear whenever the blue circle AoEs happen. When targeting reticles appear on players, they will get feared in place for a few seconds and then will slowly walk towards Ramuh, which typically means they are unable to avoid a guaranteed death from a circle AoE. Have targeted players run to a marker at the south side of Ramuh so they're easier to find to save. The fear is removed by the players being hit by at least one blue circle AoE, so help each other. Right after the blue circle AoE strike, a donut AoE strikes in the water and the outer ring of the arena. The damage of the blue circle AoEs is increased by the number of orbs in the arena, so maintaining not too many is best. This is done by picking up 1 or 2, but not 3, as that buff is shorter but doesn't do anything. Rolling Thunder tethers 2 players together and hurts them each time either uses an action, and the damage gradually ramps up. The effect is removed by one of them grabbing 3 orbs. If either player dies, the tether simply jumps to a new player. Tanking is done by having one tank quickly grab 3 orbs early in the fight and take over tanking. When tanking Ramuh, position yourself in the northern side of the arena, possibly on a marker, so it is easy for other players to avoid you. When your surge buff is running out, the other tank will grab 3 orbs and take over, so at no point a tank is tanking without the buff. If you grab more orbs after the third, a debuff that still protects you but reduces spell healing received is applied instead. Don't stack this effect, but don't worry and simply swap as normal. Around halfway through the fight, there is an ad intermission. Simply focus the ads and don't forget the mechanics. I recommend maintaining around 3 orbs in the arena, as you need a multiple of 3 orbs to accomplish anything useful with them anyway. Shiva. Pay attention to what weapon she brings out. Sword and Shield means she will do a frontal cone stack aimed at the tank that must be shared. Shortly after, she will do a frontal cone tank buster again towards the tank, Glacier Bash, that you can sidestep. The sword also builds a stacking debuff on the tank that makes him take more blunt damage. Staff summons spread markers and builds a stacking debuff on the tank that makes him take more slashing damage. Aim to have each tank a different weapon between these two. Initially, the weapon sequence is random, but when at spawn, she will always switch to sword. Phase 2 always starts with staff while showing a mechanic involving 4 circle AoEs. These indicate the safe spots when immediately after 5 circle AoEs appear. For the staff spreads, there is space for 2 players in each quarter. Wind on the ground means the floor will become slippery. Simply stop moving until it fades, as Shiva will never do something that requires you to move during that. After staff has resolved, have a tank move Shiva out to the edge of the arena, but don't touch the edge. She will switch to bow, which involves a 270-degree cone attack that kills anything not a tank. Get behind her. A bit later, she will mark a random player with a blue marker, which indicates a line knockback that can be knockback immune. If Shiva is moved to the edge and whoever's targeted stands directly behind her, the knockback can be taken without hitting the opposing edge. Third weapon is random between staff and sword, but will overlap with a 4 then 5 AoE, so pay attention. At this point, she will also be able to use Whiteout, a donut AoE, as well as Heavenly Strike, which is a sudden knockback she uses moments after Whiteout, so be sure to be knocked inwards. The fight will continue to swap between bow, then sword or staff, until Hardened Rage, which happens when she hits 11 buff stacks. Usually, the fight ends during the first bow or the weapon that follows after. Odin. Zangetal is a heavy tank buster. Use mitigation. At least something like Rampart if you can. Throughout the fight, try to keep the rage spread out, as Odin will randomly target 3 players with an AoE attack that includes an attack speed slow. Prioritize the spear ads when they spawn, as they pulse raid-wide damage. The fight finishes with a DPS check Hardened Rage when Odin hits 15% HP, but otherwise doesn't require you to hurry, so if the DPS check is causing you trouble, accumulate resources as you close in on the 15%, and then unleash everything in the final Hardened Rage cast. I hope you found this quick rundown of all the ARR Reborn Extremes, and Odin, helpful. Be sure to add your own tips if you have anything to add in the comments, and of course, good luck if you went into an encounter. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, the hard version of Thornmarch used to be a lot more similar to the extreme version, with the difference being that in the hard version, the Moggles were a bit more resilient, but stayed down once defeated once. The king was also attackable at all times, however, he would cast Memento Moggle at a specific HP threshold, and the damage of this spell was determined by how many Moggles were left alive. Many wipes were had due to players ignoring the quote-unquote ads.